afternoon, Saif sir. Good afternoon, Raja. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to the Director of Center for Innovation and all the participants. Visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes.
ठीक है मैम, तो या इसको ऐसे ही छोड़ेंगे या आप इसको मतलब बाद में फिर शो करें?
हाँ, फुल स्क्रीन कर दें?
नहीं मैम, अभी मैं थोड़ा सा इंट्रोड्यूस कर दूँ।
सॉरी,
मैं कह रहा हूँ मैं स्टार्ट कर लूँ, फिर आप ऐसे करिए ना, पावर पॉइंट अभी शेयर कर देंगे, अभी ऐसे रखेंगे, आप इसको बाद में शेयर करेंगे जैसा?
नहीं, अभी कर लेते शेयर, नो प्रॉब्लम।
चलिए मैं फिर शो करता हूँ।
ठीक है, ओके।
On behalf of the Center and IIC 4.0, I welcome Dr. Yasmeen Shamsi Rizvi, and she is a colleague of mine. She is working with me in my Center for Management Studies. I just give a small profile, though his profile, and the CV is very big and large. So I will just be very precise and just share a few words with you. Dr. Yasmeen Shamsi Rizvi is PhD in Strategic Human Resource Management. She holds two PG degrees, one is MBA, one is MSc from Aligarh Muslim. She is certified by Bocconi University, Italy, in International Leadership and Organization Behavior, and actually she is teaching a paper related to Human Resource Management, Leadership and Communication in my center, Central Management Studies. She is certification from Rice University, Johns Hopkins, Minnesota, University of Toronto, and Bangalore. She has certification from IIT Roorkee also. She is a learned lady. She is presently assistant professor at the Center for Management Studies, and she is presently teaching paper like organizational structure, dynamic and change, leadership, etc. She has over 21 years of experience of teaching MBA and postgraduate students. She worked with, previously she worked with in Lucknow, then MIT Business School, Noida. She also headed the training and engagement function at MEX-Saket. She has published a number of research papers in reputed journals. And apart from this, she is very keen, she has taken very keen interest in MDPs, and she has done a number of MDPs in IIM Lucknow. Then she has worked with corporate, she has done a number of training programs in corporate. And apart from this, her training areas basically are positive emotion and human strength, team building, leadership, and these type of the things that the man is teaching is really very important for entrepreneurship. So that's why we invited her to be a part of this IC 4.0, and hopefully she will the knowledge she will share today. So, ma'am, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Saif, for giving my introduction to everybody. Okay, I'll just share the PPT. Okay, so today we are going to discuss a very critical topic about innovation and how leadership is responsible for innovation. Can we have the other mics mute, please? Thank you so much. All right, so the world around us has changed tremendously. As we know, because of the pandemic, there have been major transformations. And today we are in this mode, the online mode. This is because of innovation. And which company is responsible for this? So we are meeting on Google Meet. And the company responsible for this is Google. So let's also talk about the founders of Google, that is Larry Page and Sergey Brin. So they have been very innovative since they started the organization, and today we see how we are reaping the benefits of how they have innovated. Had leaders not innovated, we would have been stuck at homes during the pandemic. Our children would have lost an education. So the world continued to move on because of such innovations. Hence, we have to understand what are the nuances of innovative leadership. So we will understand things in more depth. Before we proceed with our discussion of the key concepts of innovation, let's think about what happens when you don't innovate. So think about a company called Kodak. So once upon a time, it was a leading organization. It was an icon of American technology innovation when it was at its peak, when it was founded in 1890s. But then what happened? Kodak went on the brink of bankruptcy. What went wrong? Would anybody like to share with me? What do you think went wrong with Kodak? Why did they lose out? And to whom did they lose out? What are your views? All right, to explain things further, so we all know about Fuji films. So this was the Japanese competition that Kodak faced in the 1980s. So the Fuji Film Company came up with digital technology, digital films, but Kodak did not innovate. They stuck to their old technology of, the conventional mode. So because of that, they lost out to Fuji Films. Hence, when organizations don't innovate, they can become bankrupt and they just disappear. Now, let us look at this model of organizational life cycle. So we all know that every product has a life cycle. So when it is conceived to when you start selling it and when it starts to earn revenues, and then if you don't innovate and don't differentiate and don't add new features to your products or services, it can become redundant. Similarly, the same thing happens with organizations. So organizations also have a life cycle. So as we can see in this chart, we see that in organization, first there is birth, then there is growth, then there is decline, and there is death. Now, to borrow from the living systems, so this is what happens to living beings also. There is birth, growth, decline, and death. But organizations can continue to sustain themselves and avoid the stage of death and avoid the stage of decline. Even if they have gone towards the stage of decline, there is a possibility of coming back and growing once again. What has to be done to be able to avoid decline and death? Let's look at this chart here. This is Wiesel and Johnson's model of organizational decline. We see that if corrective action is taken at the crucial stage, then there is possibility of, what is the possibility? Can everybody see this chart? There is a possibility of turnaround. So we have seen many cases of excellent turnarounds happening. So you may have heard about the organization Harley and Davidson. So at one point of time, that company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Now, what happened to that company? Again, because of Japanese competition, this company was not making profits. There were a lot of faulty products, and it was losing out. The creditors decided not to lend finance to the organization. What did this company do? This company then turned to its workers and asked for ideas to improve the manufacturing process. And after improving the manufacturing process with the inputs from the workers and innovating in the manufacturing process, the company once again became profitable and started to be the market leader. So therefore, this is just a point to tell you that there is a possibility for organizations to come back from decline if they innovate. Hence, it makes a strong case for innovative leadership. Had the leaders not trusted their employees, had the leaders not trusted their workers, this kind of turnaround would never have happened. Had they been stuck with their mindset like the Kodak leaders, that this is what we do and this is what we continue to do. So when you are stuck with that mindset, then obviously there is a decline. And of course, death also of the organization. So let's understand what is innovation leadership. So basically it involves synthesizing different leadership styles. So what are the different leadership styles? We'll discuss that also. And what is characteristic of them is that they do not accept the status quo. If there is something that is going wrong or they are stuck in something, they want to come out of it. So they will cultivate such an environment where new ideas can be developed and they can blossom. They are visionaries basically, and they encourage collaboration. They create a culture of trust and venturousness. So we will understand this through some examples today. Now, as I told you about innovation leadership, that it is about synthesizing different leadership styles. So to tell you further about different leadership styles, we'll refer to Goldman's leadership styles, which is commanding, visionary, democratic, coaching, affiliative, and pace setting. So we cannot say that a leader is visionary, only visionary. We cannot say that he's only democratic. So you have to basically synthesize these styles together to be able to become an effective leader. And being effective leader means that you are in sync with what are the requirements, what kind of business you are in, what you want to do, what is your business model. So if you are in a bureaucratic organization where you do not give too much importance to innovation, then you can have a typical commanding leadership style, perhaps, or coaching one, right? But if you are in an industry where innovation is very critical, therefore you have to synthesize all these styles into yourself and then lead the organization. So we may have heard of Steve Jobs, and he has been criticized for being a little bit harsh towards his employees, being a taskmaster. So that does not mean that he's not visionary. That does not mean that he's democratic. Yes, he has also demonstrated commanding leadership style, but then this is what is required. So it's like a toolbox. Leadership is actually a toolbox where you have to um, pick those tools which are necessary in a given situation and then lead those people. So we cannot stick to any one style. Otherwise, there will be no progress and the company will not be able to achieve its objectives strategy. So this is to tell you about basically what is leadership and what are the leadership styles that are important. Now, what are the characteristics of creative leaders? First, as you can see in this chart, so there are four important elements. One is knowledge, cognitive abilities, there is a passion for the task and flow, and something about the personality, which is also very critical. So let's talk about knowledge. If we look at the list of the most innovative leaders of the present time, such as Jeff Bezos and Satya Nadella and Elon Musk. So if we were to analyze their characteristics, we can, talk in terms of these four dimensions. So knowledge, they are highly knowledgeable people. They have a wide range of information. They are not confined to their areas. So if you look at what Elon Musk does, he's into cryptocurrency, to sending people to space and electric cars and whatnot. He's extremely knowledgeable. About Google founders like Larry Page, Sergey Brin, they are highly qualified. Larry Page is a computer scientist. So they have in-depth knowledge of whatever work they are getting into. Cognitive abilities, very intelligent, very curious. They think out of the box. They think divergently. They are not myopic. They don't think along a set pattern. So they can think of different things in different ways. There is passion. So there are so many cases of leaders who have such passions. For example, Ray Kroc, who is the co-founder of the company McDonald's. So he has been extremely passionate about learning how to implement that model of, serving burgers, fast food all over the world. So he went to that outlet where the McDonald brothers would serve burgers, and he learned each and every step in that burger making process himself. And then he got so passionate about it that he wanted to apply this model to the whole world. Is there a comment here? Just a minute. We'll have to exit. Okay. All right. Thanks, Rahila, for having joined. All right. So I'll carry on. Is everything okay? Is my presentation going fine? If you have any comments, do let me know. All right, so we'll proceed. So this is about the characteristics of creative leaders. And so they are extremely passionate about the task and flow. About personality. Okay, I'll check the comments later. If you have to say anything, you can please unmute yourself and tell me directly. About personality, they are non-conformist, extremely self-confident, thrill-seeking, energetic, and persistent. So this is how we can classify all these leaders who have led great innovations. Today, we will also discuss John Cotter's change model. So, talking about organizations such as Kodak that have not changed, or company like Netflix that has evolved with time. So, when an organization changes, there are certain important stages that they follow, which is at the heart of innovation. So we will understand this also with the help of the book that John Cotter has written, Is Our Iceberg Melting? I do not know if you have already read it, but if you have, then perhaps we can discuss it together. If you haven't, then we will learn a few issues or a few important lessons from that book. Let's talk about Netflix. Now, Netflix became very popular. So during the lockdown, how many of us relied on Netflix to keep ourselves entertained and sane? Netflix was a source of entertainment for many of us as we could not go out, watch movies, meet friends. So let's take the example of Netflix and see how it has changed over time. And had it not changed, today we would not have had Netflix and it would not have been so popular as it is today. So the founder of Netflix is Wilmot Reed Hastings. He's a co-founder, chairman, CEO, born in Massachusetts, highly educated, Stanford University, Bowdoin College. So this is about his basic background. So as we know, Netflix is a streaming content provider specialized in entertainment, and today it has 240 million subscribers. So that's huge. Now, what have they been doing? So it started in 1997 with the help of Mark Randolph. So what they did was first they started, as a small DVD by mail company. Okay, and then it evolved. So as we see in this chart, perhaps it may not be very visible to you. So this is basically telling us the evolution of the company, and why we are showing you this chart is to tell you how companies need to evolve in order to remain relevant in the world. So we see that Netflix started in 1997 as a DVD rental company. Then it moved on to become they applied a subscription model, as in they stopped sending physical copies and made a catalog of titles available online to be consumed by the public at any time in their home. Then they launched the video streaming services in 2007, but they had only 1,000 titles and only worked on PCs and Internet Explorer. So then they further evolved. And after all this evolution, then they tripled their subscribers in the last 5 years. So as I told you, that in 2021, they had 240 million subscribers. Had Netflix not done this, and had they just stuck to their old model that we will only send DVD by rental, we will only stick to this model, then they would have been out of business, and we would not have even heard of the name Netflix, because at that point of time, we weren't aware of so many international organizations. But now it is there in every home, in every mobile phone. So this is the beauty of innovation. Now, this is again a timeline of how it evolved and the pricing strategy of Netflix, which we will not discuss in detail. Now, about the culture at Netflix. So leaders, besides being innovative themselves, they also need to create a workplace culture of innovation, because leaders cannot operate in isolation. They need a team. They need a workforce. So here we will talk about some HR strategies, how people are managed in the organization to create and sustain a culture of innovation. So Netflix is known to have a very, very unconventional approach to HR. So they have actually reinvented HR. So what is it, and what is it actually that they have reinvented? So for example, we know that HR is mostly about policies. There is a leave policy, right? But here in case of Netflix, they have a very unique policy. So one of their most discussed policies is their approach to employee leave and expenditure. Now, they believe in giving a lot of freedom and responsibility to their employees. So if anybody wants to take leave, then they do not have to apply, or they do not have to stick to the number of leaves that have been sanctioned or approved or as per policy. Employees are simply instructed to take holidays as they wish, as long as it doesn't cause harm to the business. Right. So why do they do that? Do you think it will work for this kind of method will work in every organization? Why do you think it works at Netflix? Would anybody like to share? Well, it will not work in many other organizations if, especially if you do not have very mature people working in that organization. At Netflix, they are very particular about who they are hiring. They believe in talent density. That is, they hire the best, the most professional people. They pay them 10 times the market rate. And when you hire such mature people, they say that we treat our employees as adults. Means adults meaning not like children, obviously. So adults meaning that you are going to be very responsible yourself. You don't have to be told to do this or not to do that, right? So they say that we believe that our employees are adults and that they will take the right decisions. That if we tell them that to take any amount of leave, they're not going to disappear 11 months out of 12. All right, they are going to behave responsibility and ensure that their actions do not harm the business. There is no set amount of time allocated for parental leave, with parents free to return to work whenever they feel like. There is no spending limit. This responsibility is again put in the hands of the employees, and they are trusted to use their best judgment on how much is appropriate to spend. So the great companies such as Google, Ritz-Carlton, they all have unusual workplace cultures where they give a lot of freedom to their employees. They do not bind them down with policies and documentation and formalization because things have to move very fast in today's day and age. If you take a lot of time in taking decisions, if everything is kept centralized, then of course the company will lose its edge. And in an industry that is technology driven, there is no scope but to move very fast. So for example, at Ritz-Carlton, their employees are empowered to take decisions. They do not have to wait for approvals. So there is this famous case of an old couple at a Ritz-Carlton hotel. So the lady was bound to a wheelchair. So she had a disability. So she was bound to a wheelchair and she expressed the desire to go to the beach. But then, a wheelchair cannot go to the beach. It doesn't roll on a beach because of the sand. Hence, the staff concerned quickly got a ramp built. All right. And through that ramp, the lady was able to go to the beach. So this is what is meant by creating unusual workplace culture, in the sense that you empower your employees, make them feel empowered, and trust them that they will take the right decisions. So when the staff at Ritz-Carlton did that, we can understand that they had a loyal customer for life. When you do such kind of actions and take so much good care of your customers, then of course you will earn their loyalty for life. So this is about unusual workplace cultures, and one example that we are discussing right now is about Netflix. So we'll see a small video, that a 10 minutes, 11 minutes video of based a professor in OP area who has written on Netflix along with Reed Hastings. So that's also very interesting. She discusses some key concepts in this small video. So I'm going to share that with you. Please let me know if it's audible. Okay. Just a minute, please. Can everybody see the screen, the video that I'm trying to share? Please confirm, then I can play it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I shall play it and tell me if there is any problem with the audio, then I will do something about it. Okay. So first I'll mute myself so that you can hear better.
people. How often have we heard that corporate cliche? As most of us know, the reality is frequently different from the slogans. But one company where that's definitely true is Netflix. And it's the main reason why the company grew from a humble DVD rental service 20 years ago to one of the world's most successful entertainment corporations. My guest today, Erin Meyer, has spent many hours with Netflix employees around the world and with its founder to find out exactly what makes the company tick. The result is a book she co-authored with the firm's CEO, Reed Hastings, entitled No Rules Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Well, Erin Meyer is a professor of organizational behavior at leading business school INSEAD outside Paris. Welcome to the program, Erin.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to have this inside track on Netflix, which so many people have been watching in lockdown, haven't they? So in a nutshell, how does Netflix innovate?
Well, it's actually quite simple, even though it's the opposite of what most companies are doing. So what they do is try to hire like only the best people, and then they give them huge amounts of freedom by giving like no rules, no procedures, no processes. And the idea is that then that freedom breeds this incredible innovation. So at most companies, I've seen that they're treating their employees like children, right? But if you want to buy a computer or go on vacation or start a new initiative, to ask permission, right? But at Netflix, with all this freedom, they treat their employees like adults. And that's what really gets this kind of speed and innovation going.
Right. But before you can release controls like, you know, not have to do expenses forms, not have to apply for vacation, you first have to get the very best people. So the key is actually talent density, isn't it, as you describe in the book?
Yeah, so that's the word they use at Netflix, talent density. And talent density, they have their own buzzwords, right? Talent density basically means instead of hiring like 100 medium employees and paying them a medium amount, you try to hire maybe only 10. And you really, you know, pay them top of market, up to 10 times what you would pay your medium employees. And once you get that talent density, then you'll see few employees, lots of talent. Then you see that performance is contagious, and that performance, that high performance just cycles up into this kind of incredible speed.
Yeah, there's a slightly scary side to this as well. I want to show a little graphic from something called the Netflix Culture Deck, which, by the way, was described by Facebook as perhaps the most important document to come out of Silicon Valley. And this is one of their Culture Deck sort of key phrases. Unlike many companies, we practice adequate performance gets a generous severance package. So is this kind of pretty scary, because everyone thinks, well, when am I going to be fired if I'm less than absolutely brilliant all of the time, every day, every night, every weekend? How does this actually work?
Yeah, well, it takes a certain kind of person to work there. I mean, you have to be ready to work for a high-performing team, like a sports team. And they say we are a team, not a family. So there's no job security. And their managers are asked to use something that they call the keeper test, which is that I need to think to myself, you know, on an ongoing basis, like if you came to me and you told me that you were leaving the company, would I fight to keep you? And if I would, I know you're a keeper. But if you're not, well, I better find some other plans.
Yeah,
right?
and so this is something that managers are trained to essentially to ask themselves all the time about their employees. The keeper test is sort of a permanent, at least it's part of the mindset, basically.
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to know that your employees are really not the best people for that spot, but to keep them on, of course, because we love our employees. It was hard to hire them. It's hard to let them go. So that keeper test is just a mechanism for encouraging managers to kind of do the hard work.
One of the most startling things in the book is when you write about the feedback that employees give to each other and also to their bosses in public.
Yes.
What's that about?
Okay, so the first step to freedom is the talent density, and the second step is what they call candor. right? And I have to tell you, I was a little surprised when I came across this also. I'm from Minnesota. We don't like candor very much in Minnesota. But the idea is that if you really want this high-performing work environment, then you need to give one another, a lot of thoughtful, caring, and honest feedback on an ongoing basis, not just to your employees, but to your colleagues and also us. So we should give that feedback whenever we think would be best. Even in the middle of a presentation would be okay if I thought that that would be the moment that would help you. And if I'm the boss, then I should, solicit this feedback. And when I get honest feedback about my own performance, I should talk about it widely so that other people see I can take it and I'm working on it.
Right. And there's an image you use, which is the boss is at the roots of a tree at supporting managers, and then the decisions get taken at the outer branches of the tree.
Yeah. Well, this is where really I think we can see the success of the organization, which is once you've got all of this talent density, and then you've got this ecosystem of feedback, and you've got the performance kind of cycling up, now you can really get rid of all of the management controls. And that's not just things like getting rid of vacation. At Netflix, they say the vacation policy is take some. Right? But it also really has to do with our fundamental way we make decisions. And at most companies, we make decisions like a pyramid. You've got the CEO at the top, the employees who are lower level, and low-level employees, they can make small, unimportant decisions.
But it's obviously subjective what makes a top employee. They have to have social intelligence, because you can't have the whole accounts team leaving the week on holiday, the week that the accounts are meant to be done.
Oh, yeah. And they say at Netflix two things. One thing they say is lead with context, not control. And what that means is that although we don't have a vacation policy, I still have to set context for my team frequently about, what's appropriate for taking vacation, right? When we can take it and how we can take it.
Erin, you're an expert on culture mapping, as you call it. So it's essentially seeing how certain values in different cultures compare or don't compare, if that's a fair summary. How does Netflix actually build a culture that works in Japan, Singapore, the Netherlands? Maybe give us an example.
Yeah, well, when I started working with Netflix, they mapped out their corporate culture on my culture map, and they compared it to the various countries that they were moving into. And I can tell you that candor was a little bit startling when they moved into Japan and Singapore. But they didn't change the culture. They just worked locally to get them working in different ways. There was this story about this woman from Silicon Valley giving feedback to one of her trying to get her Japanese employee to give her feedback. And when she asked her employee for feedback, the woman started crying. And she said, I really want to be Netflix, but I've never given feedback to a colleague before, let alone my boss.
So they need a lot of guidance to bring them to that point.
Takes a while.
I'd like to ask you about how you could situate Netflix within the corporate universe. And just before we do that, let's play you a quote from the book. And this is how we're all really under the spell of the Industrial Revolution 300 years later. And you say, most companies are still following the paradigms of the Industrial Revolution, but the biggest risk isn't making a mistake or losing consistency. It's failing to attract top talent, to invent new products, or to change direction quickly when the environment shifts. What kind of other companies can realistically get away from the Industrial Revolution? I mean, if we're talking about the public sector, right, you've got employment laws that a company has to apply that date from that period. So what is a company going to do?
Well, really, you have to ask yourself the question, what's my principal goal? Is my main goal to eliminate error and to create consistency? And if you're running a factory, that's your goal. Right? Is my main goal to innovate faster and be more flexible? If so, this is a methodology for you. And I've seen, let's think about the vaccines that came out of Johnson & Johnson and coming from Janssen Pharmaceutical. I mean, parts of that organization, clearly innovation is what they needed to come up with those vaccines. There, no rules, right? Yeah. But in other parts of that company where they're doing the productivity, eliminating error is their fundamental goal. Right. And there they can stick to the traditional methods.
Yeah. What do you think about, I mean, France is obviously a sort of traditionally a country run by engineers, so it is that kind of culture of not making mistakes and consistency, the very thing that we just played the quote about, right? Can you imagine a sort of cultural revolution in France in corporate culture, particularly in the public sector, or is that very, very unimaginable?
Oh, well, you know, I can imagine it. So I've been living in France for 20 years, and one thing I can tell you, French people like freedom. So it's true, of course, that in most French companies, there are a lot of these procedures and rules, processes that are kind of fixing or tying the company to today's situation. But I do believe that most French employees would like to have more freedom. Yeah. And that freedom in France also will breed more flexibility and innovation. I expect to see a lot more of that right here in Paris in the future.
Right. Well, on that
all right, thank you for watching that. Any comments, anything you want to share with me? What do you understand, students? Were you able to hear? Okay, so we can proceed. I believe that you have understood. So basically it was about all the issues that I have already discussed with you about the flexibility, freedom. One important key takeaway is that within the same organization, you can have different strategies in different departments. So for example, in the R&D division, you can allow for a lot of flexibility, creativity, etc. But in, let's say, the finance department, you may not any bit of creativity and flexibility. You have to stick to the set methods, because then, you know, a lot of problems will emerge. So that is one practical thing that I wanted to point out as far as innovations are concerned. Now we shall proceed and understand a few more things. So I'll share the PPT again with you. Okay, so as we've been discussing the case of Netflix, how it fosters a culture of originality. Now here we will talk about the basic theory behind any change that you want within your own life or within an organization or within a team. So what are the basic concepts that we have to understand and try to apply in our lives as an organization or as, you know, at a personal level also. So here we're going to talk about the book written by John Cotter. He's a Harvard professor. He's written a very famous book where he says, the title of the book is Our Iceberg is Melting. And this is his model, that this is an 8-step process, basically, starting with creating a sense of urgency and ending with creating a new culture. So when we say that you want to become an innovative organization, that means, or you want to do new things, radically new things. So for that, you have to create a supportive culture, that is an innovative culture. So if your culture has not been supporting your strategy, then you have to change it. For example, at HP, the company had stopped innovating. They had a set culture, and that culture was proving to be a liability. It was not an asset anymore. So, you know, they tried to radically change the organization. They called Carly Fiorina as a new CEO, and she brought in radical transformations in the organization. So they had this HP way, you know, with a, you know, a traditional way of treating employees. She changed all of that, and she brought in the new HP way, and because of which there was a lot of resistance, but she overcame all that, and then the transformation at HP also happened. So the HP is the, I mean, the laptops that we use and the different features that it has. We can thank the transformations that happened in that organization. So these kind of changes, major changes, help organizations to survive and grow and do better, and therefore customers are benefited because of such innovations. So we'll understand this John Cotter's change model, and as I said, this is not just about organizations; it is about us also. We can apply this to our own lives. So what does this book tell us? So proceeding now, so this book is about a simple fable, all right, about doing well in an ever-changing world. So the world around us is always changing, but how do we protect ourselves and sustain ourselves and not become redundant? This book got an award also, and this can be applicable and this can help thousands of people and organizations. So this is about a penguin colony in Antarctica. So in this colony, there were beautiful emperor penguins living, who had been living for many years. Amidst them, there was one curious bird, and this bird discovered a potentially devastating problem which threatened their homes. But nobody listened to him because he was one person. He was the only curious person, and everybody was busy with their own lives and they were happy in their comfort zones, and nobody wanted to listen to him. Now, in this story, we also have the characters of Fred, Alice, Louis, Buddy, Professor, and Nono. So these are some important characters which we can relate to. Some, maybe you can think of somebody who's who resembles such characters. Their tale is also about resistance to change and heroic action and overcoming obstacles and being clever with tactics to deal with such obstacles. So we can all relate with this story. So without wasting any more time, let me proceed with telling you this story. Now, this is, I hope you can see this little penguin. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very nice. So this is about a story about a flock of penguin, as I told you, who lived on an iceberg in Antarctica. Now, they had been living for many years and they called that iceberg their home. So they built family, they loved each other, and everything was going very nice. They hunted together. Now, there is this character called Fred. Fred is very curious and observant. So Fred, as you can see in this slide, he is watching the sea. And then, of course, he discovers something very devastating. So he had a briefcase stuffed full of observations, ideas, and conclusions. So he noticed one day that the iceberg had collapsed into many pieces and realized that their home was becoming fragile. So when you see an iceberg, which is also their home, so there are many icebergs. So he one day saw that one iceberg had collapsed. So he understood that their iceberg, their home was actually becoming fragile, and then he thought that he had to do something about it. Now, let's understand about icebergs. They're not like ice cubes. They can have cracks inside them called canals, and the canals can lead to large air bubbles called caves. If the ice melts sufficiently, the cracks can be exposed to water, which would pour in the canals and caves. And then what happens is it freezes quickly, and freezing liquid expands dramatically in volume. And then because of this expansion of freezing liquid, that iceberg gets broken into pieces. So this is the chemistry behind why the iceberg became fragile. Now, there is another interesting character called Alice. Alice is one of the leadership council members. She was tough and had a reputation of getting things done. So Fred tells Alice that our home is in danger. So she wants to see how it happened, why he's saying that. So Fred took Alice to dive down the water and pointed out fissures and other symptoms of deterioration caused by melting. Alice followed Fred into the heart of the iceberg and saw it with her own eyes. So then they decide that they should all, convince the leaders that something has to be done, some change has to be brought in, right? And that they should not be complacent. Now we see these characters. Louis was the head of the council and he was most respected. Alice was practical, aggressive, and made things happen. Then we see a character, very interesting character called Nono. We see people around us who will always say no to things, no to new ideas. So very negative kind of people who do not see possibilities, who see what all can go wrong. So this name is also very apt for him, called Nono. There was another character called Buddy. So what Fred does is that he prepares an iceberg model made of ice to show to the council. Okay, after seeing the demonstration, Lewis was hesitant to accept, while Nono said no, iceberg is not melting. Of course, always resisting, saying no to things. So everybody is skeptical whether anything really bad is happening or is it just his imagination. Now, so they are all wondering, they are discussing. So Alice said, we must inform everyone. So they decided to call a general assembly of the colony. So now again, there is this issue that should they tell everybody? Will it create panic or should they keep it a secret? Now Lewis needed proof. So Lewis was the leader. He needed proof whether this was really some big problem or it's just some imagination. So then they create this model, to show that actually this will happen, this problem will happen. So they found, before deciding to call a general assembly, Fred proposed an idea with a bottle that he found washed up ashore that was harder and stronger than ice, but as much as clear. He filled it up with water, sealed it, and left it in the ice, and the next morning he found it broken. So this is some kind of, proof telling the people that please wake up and realize that something disastrous is going to happen. And there is no point in denying it. So lesson number 1 over here is about creating the sense of urgency. If you want to innovate, if you want to transform, if you want to leave behind what you have been doing, that sense of urgency creation is very important, especially when you are not the only one responsible. There are a lot of people around you with whose help you can make that change happen. So in organizations, one leader who imagines a different future cannot do things alone. He has to get the buy-in from his employees. So this sense of urgency has to be created amongst everybody, all the employees. So this is how you can do that. So for example, some CEOs, they show their employees hard data as to how the organization is going on a decline. So they show the chart, the statistics, and say that within the next 3 years, this company is going to be closed, shut, and bolted, and everybody's going to lose their jobs. So this is another way of creating a sense of urgency. Now, then what happens? So a team of 5, including Lewis, Alice, Fred, Buddy, and Professor, they decided to think of a solution. So there is a core team that is pulled together who can strategize, who can decide the future course of action. So a core team is very critical to take the decisions and therefore manage their employees and show them the way forward. Okay, so what do they do then? So they are deciding upon what to do next. So they are giving various ideas. So let's drill the frozen ice, release the water, and so on and so forth. So, some kind of brainstorming is happening here. So then somebody says, let's move to the center of Antarctica. Then somebody says, then how will we get fish if we move to the center of Antarctica? And the brainstorming starts happening. The ideas start to come in. Then they think of a super glue. Well, this is just a story. So to make it interesting, these kind of things have been mentioned here. Now, then the paradigm shift happens here. So this slide is very important. As you can see, there is this moment where the paradigm shift happens, which is very crucial. So they observe a bird. So one character says, look up there, that's a bird. But then it cannot fly forever. It must be having a home somewhere. Then the other person says it could be very lost, but it does not seem to be afraid. What if moving from one place to another was just the way it lives? So this is where the paradigm shift happens. So they observe and see that this is the way a bird lives. And one says that, yes, it's a nomad, yes, moving around. And then they realize that we wouldn't try to fix melting icebergs. We would just face up the fact that what sustains us cannot go on forever. Here you can relate the story with the case of Kodak. Now, Kodak wanted to stick to what they were doing, all right, to the physical films. They do not want to move on. They do not want to open their eyes and smell the coffee and see what's happening. So they decided to stick to to their business model, and they did not evolve, because of which they became bankrupt. Now here the paradigm shift has happened. They have realized that what sustains us cannot go on forever. This is what innovative leaders realize, and they keep on moving from one idea to the other. They do not fall in love with a business model, and they do not keep cherishing it forever. So lesson 3 emerges, which is about developing a change vision and strategy, which is at the core of innovative leadership. Now they realize that this idea about the bird moving from one place to another is not something very unique, and that their founder of the colony was someone who had moved to this iceberg. So they were okay with adapting to this new way of living. So then they decide that we will move and move, and we will not stick to our ice. So again, they called a general assembly and they informed this new strategy. So a core team has taken a decision after brainstorming, and that has been communicated to everybody. Now, communication is not just ordering, there has to be a buy-in. So everybody concerned has to really be motivated to support that new strategy. So just by commanding and expecting compliance will not help. People need to be motivated. So then people decide who's to do what. A scout team should go and look for another iceberg, take your men and find such place. So everybody is starting to get into the action mode. They are all deciding what is to be done. So, people are thinking of various ways into how they can support the strategy that is about, fishing, how to store food, forecasting services, etc. Now, this is this lobbyist who is bothering the leader, Louis. So here, this is about being strong as a leader. So you have to be very tough with some people who can be creating problems when you're trying to implement your new strategy of innovation. Now, this is something on the lighter side, how everybody's coming together. So there is this buddy who's talking to the teacher. So all the characters are very excited about the new thing that has to be done. So there is this fear also. Now here we will talk about the resistance. So some people are skeptical, some are scared. Now, what is the role of people then, other people? So the role is to motivate them to come out from their, this feeling of insecurity, and contribute and support the decision. So this you can do by empowering others to act. So this is about how the penguins are starting to implement this new strategy. So they're all excited and they're very happy. Strong, bright, and highly enthusiastic scouts jumped into the water. They started searching for new icebergs. So this is how everybody is pitching in. Then lesson number 6 is to produce short-term wins. So when they scored and they told amazing tales, so they were given a reward. Okay, gave them a spare squid for food. So what is the importance of producing short-term wins? Through this, you can motivate people and you can sustain the momentum. Otherwise, people will start to lose that tempo, and that excitement and that zeal will come down. So give short, small recognition, small awards that will keep them motivated. So this is how you can do these small things. So for example, at the hospital that I worked in, Max Saket, so we had an award called the GEMS Award, going the extra mile. So every year we would recognize the employees at the hospital and give them some token of appreciation, so that the company, the hospital, continued to strive towards excellence and give excellent service to its patients. So these small celebrations, they matter a lot, to motivate people and to keep the momentum up. Lesson number 7 emerges. Don't let up, press harder and faster after the first success. Because, what happens is sometimes organizations and employees get complacent. Once you have got some achievement, then you just relax and become complacent, which is not desirable. So keep on with that momentum. Finally, they found a perfect iceberg, and later the colony moved to that new home. Now, the day after they were moving again to find the year after they were moving again to find a better iceberg. So this became their way of life. Now, even when they find it perfect iceberg, they keep moving. This is the culture that they adopted, which is called the nomadic culture, and this is about creating a new culture. So, firstly, you have to, what is the lesson? That you have to overcome the resistance to change, accept that change is the only constant, and change is the way of life, and innovation is the way of life, and doing new things, new ways is the way of life. This is how you will. We all can proceed and do new things and avoid becoming redundant and stay relevant and give our best to the world and contribute to the world in the best possible way if we keep evolving and learning new things. So this can be applied to us in our also, all of us. Now, so this is the end of the story. All right, so now though this story ends here, this is just the beginning for us to think if we are safe or if our company is safe. Are we sure that the iceberg is not melting? And this introspection, if we do, then we can adopt the innovative way of living, innovative way of functioning, and trying new things and not becoming redundant and giving our best to the environment. So with this, I end my discussion. If you have any comments or if you want to ask me anything, you are most welcome to do that.
So any question from the student side, from the participants, colleague? Okay. So any comment? I think I'm audible. So any comment from Mansab Saab is there, then Zakir Saab is also there, same ma'am. Any comment from students?
Anything you would like to share, some key takeaways, or did you find this session useful? Did you learn anything in this session? Back for me, please let me know. I believe students are here, right? You can unmute yourself. You are free to tell me. Thank you, Professor Zakir and Professor Naseeb Ahmed. What about the students? Zeran, Ayub, Tapanjit Singh? क्या आप लोग बोलते नहीं है क्लास में कुछ? I am part of Jamia only. Tell me. Shanawaz Alam, I assume that you're all students. Zehran, Ayub. Okay. I think students are feeling very shy.
No, sometimes students are not answering the question. So, Mansur sir, would you like to say something?
I want to say lecture is very nice. Really, I enjoy the lecture. And your presentation is very good. On one picture's whole story narrated. This is the uniqueness of the PPT. PPT should be like this. So really, I enjoy it. And good topic for the discussion. सर भाई आपने बहुत अच्छा किया, आपका भी बहुत अच्छा रहा और आप लगे हुए हैं, तो that's great. Thank you, Yasmeen. Yasmeen मैम से शायद मेरी मुलाकात है या नहीं, I don't know.
I think I met you, sir.
Yeah.
Maybe in the UGC HRDC Center.
Academic Staff College.
Yes.
So that's great. Nice to see you and listen your lecture. This is the first time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
That's great.
So actually, the style she adopted was very unique because showing a video, then talking in terms of penguins and all. Like she was discussing basically a concept, but it was through penguins. This was something that was very unique in nature. So now this is the actual way of teaching, in the management and other related papers. Not showing many points on the PowerPoint slide, and but just giving the concept through videos and all. So overall, I'm a person of finance, so I don't know much about this HR practices and all. But it was something that was good for me. It was learning for me. I think Mansur साहब ने उनको सीखा होगा, जाकिर साहब और हमारे जो coordinators हैं, student के लिए तो ठीक है, whatever new thing you are getting as a student, so that is something valuable for all of us, including students. So thank you very much, Yasmeen ma'am, for accepting our request and to come and now it is just a small beginning we had with you. So maybe in the next quarter, because the IIC's 4.0 quarter is ending this time. So maybe from March onwards we are having a new quarter. So maybe in the new quarter we'll have some plans. So we'll again invite you for any other HR session, maybe on strategy, maybe on HR, something that maybe leadership. I think we can have more sessions on leadership.
It will be a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Seth.
And thank you very much all for the participation. And we are having a meeting tomorrow of all the coordinators. So maybe we will plan something new and unique for the next quarter also.
Sure, inshallah.
और मनसब साहब तो शायद मिठाई भी इनके लिए ऊपर ड्यू हो गई है। मनसब साहब मिठाई कब खिला रहे हैं आप?
सर डेफिनेटली, जब भी आप चाहें, जब हुक्म करें मैं आ जाऊंगा।
नहीं, खाने नहीं आना है, बुलाना है आपको।
अच्छा जरूर, मिठाई जरूर मिलेगी।
इंशाल्लाह कल मिलते हैं फिर सर।
इंशाल्लाह जरूर।
Thank you very much all for coming.
Thank you everybody. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Yasmeen, and thank you so much, sir. So great.
Thank you, Professor Simi. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Simi ma'am,
such an honor and a privilege to hear you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Simi ma'am, adab.
Adab.
I hope we can meet Professor Simi. I have not met you. I hope we can meet someday.
Yes, of course. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.